Hello and welcome to the Ultra Fitness Training podcast for the 9th of May 2011. In this edition, Kate Howe talks to William Sichel and myself, Shaun Brassfield-Thorpe, about low mileage and high intensity training, injury risks, the use of weight vests, and cross-training principles.
What distance do you run in training?
Well, the answer to that is it all depends on what phase of training I'm in. For example, if I was, doing a training camp or doing a crash training weekend, then I might be running sort of 20 hours a day with breaks in between. If I'm in one of my normal training phases at home, I'm probably running something like 40 to 50 miles a week. Again, depending on exactly what I'm trying to achieve. But the other thing to remember is I'm not just doing slow running. I mean, it's high intensity running. There's very little easy running what I'm doing. I might be doing high intensity sessions on the treadmill. If I'm doing a long run on the road, I'll have a weight vest on. I might be doing uphill running, it could be downhill running. So it's high intensity, very low mileage, but everything's a lot harder than what I'd be doing if I was in a race.
Do you think that running relatively low mileage helps to keep your injuries to a minimum?
I think the answer to that is possibly yes. I mean, it is fairly well known that injury rates in running are linked to the number of miles run. So as a consequence to that, you could say that, if you're running fewer miles in training, the chance of injury is less. However, I think in my own case it's a bit more more intricate, the answer, because although I'm doing a lower mileage, as I say, the intensity is high, and but I'm also doing a huge amount of cross training with it. But one advantage of that is also, of course, I get more recovery between the hard running sessions, which is usually about 3 times a week I'm doing hard running. So I've got a couple of days in between. So yes, although I'm training and running hard, I'm recovering more between the sessions. So that probably helps to contribute to the minimal number of injuries I've had.
Yes, one of the things that I often try and stress is the 3 R's of training for running or for any other sport really, which is rest, relaxation and recovery. And one of the things about not having a particularly high weekly mileage and staggering your running sessions is that you do get a chance to recover between runs. A lot of runners, for example, maybe going for a run in the morning, sometimes at lunchtime and sometimes in the evening, trying to build up their miles to do 100 miles in a week, 150 miles in a week, whatever it is they're aiming for. And well, of course, one of the things about that is it gives almost no time for recovery between running sessions. And very often that is the sort of recipe for injury that puts a lot of runners off the track. One of the unusual things about William is that he appears on the surface to have a fairly low weekly mileage. But on the other hand, if you look at his annual mileage, when you consider that, for example, in 2010 he did a 1,000 mile race, and more frequently he'll do, say, 6-day races. If you actually look at his annual mileage, it's quite high. It's just that most of the miles that he runs are actually in events.
You mentioned running at training camps. How often do you attend those?
That depends on the frequency of my racing. I do race quite frequently by ultra standards, in the sense that I do about 5 ultra distance races a year, obviously not all 6-day races. So if I have a long gap between races, I would definitely be doing at least one training camp or crash training weekend. So it's really to keep me mentally and physically in tune with the sort of performance I have to do in racing. So probably yes, if the gap was more than 3 months or 3 months or more, then I would do at least one training camp to keep me in form. Yeah.
But if you're running with extra weight, with weights vests, for example, isn't that more likely to increase injury?
You might think so, but then the answer is no, because some people think that I'm sort of slapping on a great big weight vest and suddenly doing a great big hill session on the treadmill or going running for 3 hours. But you've got to remember, I started training with a weight vest in 1995, just with a very light weight, 2% of my body weight, and then I very gradually built up the weight in the vest in a way that didn't affect my running style, and which didn't really slow me down much. So in my own case, because I've done a gradual increase in the weight in the vest, it hasn't resulted in an increased injury rate. But it certainly could do if you suddenly put on a very heavy weight vest. You probably might as well just book your appointment with the physio at the same time. Yeah.
And as well as, of course, William gradually building up the weight in his vest, there's also the fact that he does a lot of other cross training, which, for example, very, very heavy squats, plyometrics exercises, and all these things basically strengthen and reinforce the joints, the tendons, the ligaments, and that's one of the things that then allows him to put more weight in the vest and run safely. And then the running with the weight vest means that when he goes off and does a long competition, he's less likely to get a strain injury because he's running at a lower intensity than he trains.
So you mentioned that you do cross training. What other sorts of training do you do apart from just running?
Well, actually, yeah, that's a good question, and one that I'm very often asked, because most people come into running because they like running. They don't come into running because they like weight training or they like gymnastics or flexibility or anything else. So as a result of that, I think it's fair to say that most runners just run, and with the positives and the negatives that brings about. No, in my own case, I'm very open-minded about the training I do. As I said before, I've tried lots of different ways of training and then assessing the race results. My way of thinking is, a runner in many ways is as good as his musculoskeletal system, and if that's not up to scratch, then simply he breaks down in races and in training. So as a result of that, I have a very wide range of training that I do. I do a lot of, as you said, I do a lot of cross training. And what does that include? Well, it includes twice a week I will do a very heavy weight training session. And other times of the week and in other phases, as I said, I'm not trying to do everything all the time. It's all broken up into training phases, simply so I can fit in lots of different types of training in a build-up to a race. So besides the weight training I'm doing, as mentioned before, I do quite a comprehensive flexibility program. I do a type of circuit training, which includes things like farmer's walk exercises, includes plyometrics, includes hopping, springing, jumping, box jumping. I do dynamic warm-ups before hard running sessions. They will include things like skipping, a little bit of stepping exercises, sort of high knees, just a vast array of movements and activities and training, all of which develop the body and the mind in a very balanced way, which supports the running training and the performances in races. I can do things. I can do like the crab. If you know what the crab is, I can do the crab position, backwards, bending over backwards and lifting the body up. I can do all kinds of things that you probably wouldn't be expecting a runner to be able to do. And to me, it's all part of the big picture. You're building up a much bigger, rounded picture of fitness and conditioning. I think the current word to describe it is I'm very well conditioned. I'm conditioned in a very wide range of activities, and then that supports a specific interest that I'm interested in, which is running very long distances. And I think that largely explains why I've never broken down in a race. You shouldn't be able to run 1,000 miles without any kind of injury, especially a world record pace. You should be breaking down with something, because most runners are breaking down in marathons and 10Ks. So the fact that I've never broken down physically or mentally, for that matter, in a race, is a tribute to the general conditioning of the body, the mind, the joints, the core conditioning, just the whole package, if you like. Look at it as a package of training, which includes running, but also a lot of other activities as well. And then that produces the all-round athlete and the person that can perform in a multi-day event without breaking down.
And part of that is the fact that almost all of William's training is done at a far higher intensity than he actually uses in a race. We've mentioned briefly about the weights that William lifts, which are, truly huge amounts of weight most of the time, which puts far greater strain on William's body, particularly, for example, his skeletal system as well as his muscles, and for that matter his tendons, ligaments and so on, it puts a greater strain on them than he's going to encounter running. William trains in, for example, some breath techniques. Again, this is a way of deliberately training the breath in a way that is more demanding in some ways than he actually uses when he's running. His flexibility work, again, he puts in more work on the flexibility than running requires alone, but it develops a more rounded physique and, as he says, a better conditioned body for all sorts of different things. A lot of people kind of overlook the fact that running is a whole body exercise. It's fair to say that it's a leg dominant exercise, but there aren't really very many muscles in the body that aren't used in running in some way, especially if you're planning on running for 6 days. I mean, for example, the neck, you wouldn't really think, oh, well, I'm a runner, I need to train my neck or something. But then again, you just think about going out, spending 20 hours a day on the track with your head up. It's you'll find sooner or later that there aren't many muscles in the body that don't require work. But the same is true, as I say, of the skeletal system, the joints, the tendons, the connective tissue, everything. So much of William's training is basically designed to try and make him bulletproof, as it were, when he's on the track, so that the running actually seems comparatively easy compared to the training.
That's it.
That's about it for this edition of the Ultra Fitness Training podcast, but we'll be back again soon. In the meantime, please do check out www.ultrafitnesstraining.com for more tips, suggestions, videos and exercise resources. If you'd like William and myself to provide a training analysis of your current training, or if you'd like us to design a training program or offer any other training support services, then please do drop us an email on info@ultrafitnesstraining.com.